Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us here on the University of Montana campus in Missoula, Montana. My name's Zach Brown, and I get the distinct honor of moderating tonight's community discussion and the second annual State of the Community event. We all choose to live in this place for a number of reasons, and it's a wonderful place to live. The quality of life here is very high, but of course, as comes with any community, there are many issues that we need to address together. And from the top, we have leaders here with us tonight that really set the tone for how we address those issues in our community. The name of the day is collaboration between county, city, and the University of Montana. And we're going to discuss a number of issues tonight that really affect all of our quality of life. So I really would like to now introduce our three distinguished guests. Royce Engstrom is the 17th president of the University of Montana. Royce has a PhD in analytical chemistry from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Jean Curtis has been a Missoula County Commissioner since 2000. She has lived in Missoula County her entire life and also attended the University of Montana and studied nursing. John Engen is Missoula's 50th mayor. John is a Missoula native and attended Hellgate High School and studied journalism at the University of Montana. So with that, I would like to welcome our three guests. This discussion, which again is framed with the word collaboration, will range from climate action planning to responding to the issue of sexual assault, university business partnerships, the Global Leadership Initiative here at the University of Montana, healthcare partnerships, parks and trails, and the Quality of Life Initiative. As this year's University of Montana student body president, I've had the distinct honor working with some of these folks, all three of these folks, on a number of these issues. And so I'm very excited to participate in the discussion and also allow all of you to give your contributions and questions. So with that, I'd like to introduce President Royce Engstrom.
Thank you, Zach. Good evening, everyone. Glad to have you here. Mayor Engen, Commissioner Curtis, pleasure being with you tonight and look forward to some great conversation. Before I make just a few introductory comments, I want to give a special thank you to Zach Brown. Zach is our ASUM president this year, as most of you I think know, and he is doing just a fantastic job, such a delight to work with, and such an integral partner in deliberations at the university. And he's running a great ship, and so congratulations, Zach, and thanks for doing this tonight. I'd like to make just a few comments. First, I'm going to just say a few things about some of the richness I see in the university-community relationship. I want to give you an update on just a few exciting things that have happened at the university just in recent days and weeks, and then speak to a few areas of concern and involvement that we know exists there in some of the university-community relationships. So let me start with this notion of the richness of this relationship. I have the opportunity to talk to prospective students and faculty members and other employees that might come to the University of Montana. And one of the first comments that I make to them is that this is one of the healthiest university-community relationships, one of the most vibrant relationships, I think, in a university town. And it's a real asset to both the community and the university to have this relationship. The physical setup of the university across the river from the downtown area is one that is really conducive to interaction, and it's a real selling point for all of us. Just some of the recent events that have happened on campus illustrate this so well because they involve community members to a great extent. Just a couple of nights ago, Mary and I had the privilege of attending a piano concert in the music hall just a few buildings over. Stephen Hessler and Chris Hahn, two faculty members of music, gave one of the best piano performances I think you could see anywhere in the world. It was just an astounding performance. But the neat thing is that the room was packed, and it was packed mostly with community members, a mixture of university people and community members, but a great interaction there. Recently in this very building, we had an exhibit put on by the Montana Museum of Art and Culture here from the university that had art works and paintings that you would have to travel to New York or Paris to see. Some of the impressionist paintings that exist out there. In fact, we had some paintings that you will never see in an exhibit because they're in a private collection. Again, the attendance at those exhibits was largely community members. We have an alumni lecture series that just started this week on Tuesday night, a series about Russia this year. And the room was filled not just with university folks, but many, many people from the community. We have #1 Big Sky rated basketball teams right now, both men's and women's. And you go to those games, and among the 2,000 to 6,000 people, depending on the game there, most of those folks are from the community, in addition to folks from the university. We have a science museum, Spectrum, that is in the process of locating downtown right now to bring science to the children and families in our community. So there are so many ways that we interact with one another, and the presence of the university in the Missoula community brings a richness to the community, and vice versa. Our students, our faculty members are downtown at the markets, on the Saturday morning farmers markets, the Beer Fest event a few weeks ago, and so on. So there's just a lot of dynamic interchange between the two. We've had some exciting things happen at the university just recently. A few days ago, a week ago, we celebrated our 120th birthday, Charter Day we call it. Can you imagine the foresight that the folks had 120 years ago to say higher education is one of the most important things we can do in our society here in Montana? For them to take the actions to put in place the University of Montana 120 years ago is just astounding to me, and we celebrate their foresight at this event, Charter Day. This year we did a couple of special things around Charter Day, organized by our provost, Perry Brown, who's sitting in the audience here. One of those things was to announce a new thing called Programs of National Distinction, where we've identified 3 academic programs that we're going to focus resources on and propel them to a truly level of national visibility, national reputation. Wildlife biology is one, creative writing is one, and biology and ecology is another one. We also, at that day, celebrated in part the 2nd year of something called the Global Leadership Initiative, a new educational program for our undergraduates. And an important part of that program is community engagement. Those students will all do a major beyond the classroom project of some sort, a semester-long project. Some of those students will go overseas to do that project. Some may go to places like Washington, D.C., but many of them are going to be right here in the community doing community development, community engagement kinds of things. We've been working quite a bit in the past year, or several years actually, on the topic of sustainability. How can we improve at the university our contribution to the carbon footprint? And I'm delighted to be able to say to you that the Committee on Sustainability recently reported to me that we've actually decreased our carbon output, not a lot, but by a few % over the past couple of years. That's a big step considering how difficult that is. Zach has been a major player in that effort, actually, and he has actually, with some partners of his, introduced not only policy changes to the university and to the Board of Regents, but he's actually introduced a bill to the legislature this session to help us all achieve a better level of sustainability through energy conservation. So we're very proud of Zach and his colleagues to do that. But most important at the university are just the day-to-day accomplishments of our students, our faculty, our staff, and our friends. Let me just give you a few quick examples. We just moved up 2 positions in the national ranking by the Peace Corps for the production of Peace Corps volunteers. We're number 12 in the nation, We're a fairly small university, but we're number 12 in the nation for the production of people who go into the Peace Corps. Very civic-minded faculty we have here. Some outstanding things done by individual students. You perhaps saw one of our student athletes, Alyssa Smith, on the women's basketball team a few weekends ago on her own, raised $15,000 for burn victims. Matthias Ward, one of our men's basketball players, we just learned today, was named to the Division I All-American academic basketball team, one of only about 15 people in the country, and one of those is Matthias Ward on our team, a great student athlete. Some of the folks helping to put on this event tonight are from our University Relations Department, and they just received word a couple of days ago that their signature magazine called The Montanan, which many of you see, got a Grand Gold Award in a major competition for the writing in that magazine. Another faculty member of ours, Chuck Thompson, in our College of Health Professions and Biomedical Sciences, was just named a fellow of something called the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, an extremely prestigious award. So some really exciting things are happening at the university. Our people are working day in and day out to increase and enhance the reputation through their productivity. Now, we know there are some areas of concern and some areas of friction between the university and community. I don't think there would be a university town in America where there isn't some points of contention, some points of concern that need to be tended to. Whenever you have an institution the size of this one, 15,000 students and 2,000 to 3,000 employees, that's a large number of people. There are going to be some concerns come up. One of those that we've all been very attentive to this past year is in this area of campus safety. So I want to give you just a couple of updates quickly on that. We've put in place a number of specific actions over the past year to address campus safety and the topic of sexual assault. Primary among those is education. Many of you know that we started an online educational program called PETSA, Personal Empowerment Through Self-Awareness. And we asked all of our students to take that online course. And as of this morning, 14,063 students have taken successfully that online course. That is essentially 100% of our student body when you take into account that some of our students are online learners, some of our students have actually graduated in December, so they didn't take the program. So I'm very proud of our students for grabbing hold of that educational process and pursuing it. We added another position to our public safety office, an officer specifically to interact with students in and around the residence halls and across campus. We put in a new student-athlete conduct code and an athletic conduct team to oversee that code and take action when necessary. Another point of concern that we know is going on in our community is the topic of our Missoula College. And I want to talk to you just briefly about that. The Missoula College is part of a major bill before the legislature called the Jobs Bill. And it's a part of a $98 million program to build buildings around the state, most of them in higher education, but not all. So the Missoula College is part of that, and we're seeking an appropriation of $29 million, supplemented by $3 million of additional money that we'll come up with to build that building. Now, there is controversy over the location. I just want to say a couple of things about that, and I suspect we'll get into that in some more detail. I want to just emphasize that this is really part of a long-term plan for the University of Montana that looks forward to the next several decades of growth of the university. It's a plan that was approved by the Board of Regents in 2007. We need to think about our future in a cohesive way, not on a building-by-building basis. Other potential sites that you know have been talked about, like Fort Missoula, have been researched, and for various reasons, we've decided that those aren't workable locations for the Missoula College, and so our proposal, our plan is to put this, to develop the new South Campus, the Missoula College being the first academic building to go there, although that campus has been developed for quite a few years now with student housing and athletic facilities. Our enrollment did take a hit this year, this last fall, for a variety of reasons, and so we are working diligently on a day-by-day basis to address that issue, and in fact, going so far as the cabinet of the university doing phone-a-thons to prospective students on Wednesday nights. So that's a concern, and we're working very hard to address that because we know our community expects to have a healthy enrollment at the University of Montana, and it's a vital part of the economic and quality of life issues around our community. So those are some opening comments, and Zach, I'll look forward to some further discussion as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm honored to represent Missoula County and my fellow commissioners Bill Carey and Michelle Landquist here tonight, alongside President Engstrom and Mayor Engen. Missoula County and the City of Missoula are fortunate to have leadership in these three public institutions that foster strong relationships, communication, respect, and collaboration. We all have different roles and responsibilities, but the public is better served because we all work together to make this a better place. We are proud and protective of our quality of life, as the President mentioned. We have great people, we have beautiful landscapes, we have clean water, we have places to learn, work, and play. You are all deeply involved in your communities. You serve as first responders, on school boards and community councils, as youth leaders and election judges, and on many boards, either for the city and the county or for local nonprofits. You make this a better place to live, and you expect us to do our part to keep it that way. So how do we maintain our quality of life while encouraging economic development? What is local government's role? And how do we create wealth for all sectors of our community? Growing businesses and protecting the things we love about this place are not mutually exclusive. As a board member for the Missoula Economic Partnership and the Bitterroot Economic Development District, I've had the privilege of meeting with a variety of existing and new businesses. This is what they tell me. Our skilled, educated workforce makes their business successful. So BRED, Bitterroot Economic Development District, is an economic development planning organization that identifies strategies and projects in our region that grow jobs. Missoula Economic Partnership leverages public dollars to grow private investment and jobs by connecting them with existing resources and programs. Research shows that small businesses create the majority of all new jobs in the United States. So Missoula County invests in these two organizations because they are creating the environment that supports and accelerates small business growth in our area. Missoula County also focuses on developing public-private partnerships. About a year ago, I stood in Bonner with two businessmen who had just purchased the old mill site. The backdrop was decks and decks of logs in a log yard that had been empty for years. They saw it as an investment in community and a way to create jobs. Missoula County is doing our part to help attract new businesses to the site. We recently worked with the owners to create a new tax increment finance district for the mill site to fund the replacement of aging infrastructure like roads and utilities that serve the businesses there. We already have companies in Bonner that are painting siding that is shipped across the United States, that are chipping those logs to make paper in Washington State, and just this month we've added 25 new jobs in the Bonner area building recreational trailers to fill orders across the western United States and Canada. It is great to have activity in Bonner again. We know, and businesses remind us, that by protecting our environment and our quality of life, that is good for business. That is why they stay here. Our county, with the leadership of an informed Board of Health, has worked for years to improve our air quality and protect our water quality. Those of you who lived here in the 70s and 80s remember what our air smelled like. We also had toxic sediments in the river behind the Milltown Dam. Those sediments are out of the river, and our air is clean. We learned from our past. As we attract modern manufacturing to Missoula County, we are confident that it will not be at the expense of our air and water quality. The county also supported the recommendation of Governor Schweitzer to add the old Smurfett stone mill site to the EPA's national priority listing because of the threat to the Clark Fork River. The newly named Frenchtown Technology and Industrial Center and Missoula County share the goal of cleanup, restoration, and redevelopment of the site. We will continue to work together to achieve those goals in the most responsible manner possible, and we look forward to reporting successes in the Frenchtown area next year. We continue to invest in our public infrastructure. Currently, many local contractors are working on the renovation of the historic courthouse and the annex. Please excuse our mess. This project honors the historic architecture and use while preparing for the future. It incorporates environmental and energy efficiency principles and improves public access. We're building additional courtrooms, improving the space for the Sheriff's Department, building a new 911 center and an emergency operations center. This is a multi-year, $13 million project. The Commission has approved an additional 4 mills to fund this project, phased in over 4 years. 1 mill in Missoula County amounts to about $3.30 on the average home. Half of those mills are already reflected on your current tax bill. We also completed our Parks and Trails plan this last year, and we learned that you love those assets. Our 2 most recent trails provide safe routes to school for the kids in Hellgate Elementary and Lolo School. We recently applied for a $6 million federal grant to build a trail to connect Missoula to the existing Bitterroot Trail along Highway 93 in Lolo. This trail connection has been on the wish list for years, so cross your fingers that we get that grant. Next, the county continues to invest in our public health infrastructure. The old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, still holds true today. So let me tell you about a few things that we're doing that we're proud of. The Nurse Family Partnership is a research-based program that works with first-time low-income moms. The program focuses on improving pregnancy outcomes, improving child health and school readiness, and helping families improve their economic self-sufficiency. Nurse Family Partnership lets firstborns with low-income parents get a safe, healthy start on life. And our first baby, a little boy, was born Tuesday. Missoula, our public Partnership Health Center broke ground on the Lowell school-based clinic in December. We drove by tonight, and it's almost ready for the sheeting on the roof. This partnership with is a partnership with Missoula County Public Schools to allow us to better address the health needs of the children who attend Lowell School and their immediate families. It's the first of its kind in Montana, even though it's been done across the country, and we're using local contractors there too. We're happy to report that the residency program that we talked about last year is a reality. This great collaboration with the University of Montana, both of our hospitals and Partnership Health Center, will bring family practice residency program to Missoula County. We broke ground on that project. If you drive down Railroad Street by the old Creamery building where PHC is located, you'll see a big pile of dirt and some big equipment. They have to work hard because the first 10 residents will arrive in July. It will take 3 years for them to complete the program, and in just 4 years, we'll have 20 new doctors in town. And statistics tell us that 70% of them will stay here where they earned their residency. So this will be great for Western Montana. So as you notice, Missoula County is single-handedly turning the economy around by hiring a lot of contractors. We're glad we can help. We're also working hard to take care of each other. We recognize that even though the economy is improving, the recession has been long and hard and has impacted some families more than others. We must continue to provide housing support, food, Meals on Wheels, access to mental health care, and to regular health care for families and individuals that still need those services. The city and the county have worked for the past couple years to develop a 10-year plan to end homelessness. We call it Reaching Home. It was shocking to learn how many families struggle in our communities. We have removed the mask of homelessness and taken away that stereotypical picture in our minds of who's homeless and found out we were looking at our neighbors. What they need most is a place to call home, not a label, and not to be ignored. We also learned there are many things that we can do to prevent them from becoming homeless in the first place. Sometimes it means they need tires for their car so they can get to work, or some help to pay the heating bill. It will take a village, but we have a great village, so I know we'll make a difference. The health department and the Missoula, or the MSU College of Nursing, the portion that's located here, have worked to monitor BMI, body mass index, in third graders in several schools across the county for several years. We learned that 27% of our third graders are overweight or obese. We have a child obesity problem. We know we can do more to make sure children are active and healthy. Let's Move Missoula is a community effort to prevent chronic health issues like diabetes and heart disease in our children. You'll be seeing new initiatives being implemented as a result of our first successful Summit to Prevent Childhood Obesity that was held here last fall. There are community problems that need to be addressed, but we also have stuff in our own house to fix. Regulations and policies that don't appear to make sense or serve the general public. As you know, the county has a new department, Missoula County Community and Planning Services. We have to have an acronym for everything. This one is CAPS. CAPS will be leading the commissioner's priority of a wholesale overhaul of our planning regulations. We're also putting more permits online for customer convenience. Our goal is to make it easy to do the right kind of development. With your help, the result will be a dynamic, useful set of regulations that guide development throughout the county. So thank you for coming tonight, and please think about how you can be involved in keeping this a great place to live, work, and play. Maybe you're interested in the Let's Move Missoula initiative, or helping us figure out how to prevent homelessness, or improving our planning regulations. Whatever your interest, we appreciate your involvement. You all make a difference. As commissioners, we'll continue to care about our place, our economy, and our people. There are challenges that remain, and we'll need to find community solutions. It will take all of us working together. Thank you.
Could we do the mic this way? Does that work? If I just stand here? It does work? Fantastic. That way you get the full view, which I think is really important for you. Thank you, by the way, for spreading out this evening, because it makes it look like the theater is more full, and we appreciate that as well. It's good to see all of you everywhere you are in this theater this evening. I want to thank my colleagues here, the three leaders who are sharing the stage, who are doing great work for our community in a wide variety of ways. So it turns out that serving as mayor is filled with paradox and irony, and a piece of that is that the job requires both patience and impatience. It turns out it takes a long time for things to happen sometimes, and sometimes the better the things, the longer they take. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples here of some things that I think have taken a long time, but I think will matter for our community for a long time. And those two things involve our partners who are sitting here this evening. The first is development services. So interestingly enough, sometimes you have to take things apart to put things back together. And I've served as mayor now since 2006 and joined the Missoula City Council in 2002. And from the time I began serving in local government, I heard over and over again that we did not have regulations or an organization that was built to accommodate and manage development in a reasonable, predictable, timely manner. And that has absolutely nothing to do with the people who are delivering the services, and I think everything to do with the way we created the organization that let them deliver the services. So we started my first term as mayor by revamping our zoning regulations. Those zoning regulations were cobbled together over the course of about 70 years. They reflected very little of what is at play on the ground today in Missoula, Montana. And it took a couple of years to get that done. Took considerable community hand-wringing, a little arguing, oddly enough, in Missoula. But at the end, we ended up with a product that we think the entire community can live with, and a product that will let us grow in a reasonable, thoughtful, predictable manner. And that's the sign of a mature community. We got that piece of business done, and the next piece of business we needed to engage in was putting together an organization to ensure that those regulations were interpreted and administered in the most effective way possible. And so interestingly enough, we ended up talking to our partners in the Office of Planning and Grants, the good folks at Missoula County, about what we believed was a need to make a change, and a fairly dramatic change at that. We believed that we needed to consolidate some city departments with some of our city-county departments, put those folks in the same place, and create a one-stop shop. And we've done that over the course of the last year, again with some consternation and not without some pain. But in the end, I think we're going to have a product that will better serve our community the way it looks today, and create a community that we can be proud of 10 and 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years from now. And that's incredibly important, and it took a tremendous amount of, I think, courage and maturity on the part of the good folks at Missoula County to recognize that, yes, we can make this change, and yes, it is reasonable to think about it, and yes, we will march down this path with you. And you just heard Commissioner Curtis make reference to the fact that Missoula County now has an organization that it believes is better equipped to manage the changing and complex issues that happen outside of the city limits, and some that still happen within the city limits. That's a tremendous boost, I think, for Missoula County, and it's certainly good for the city of Missoula. So Development Services is the product of conversations that have happened over the course of probably 15 years, but they've come to fruition this year through good, honest, hard work and our commitment to each other and a little bit of extra trust, and that's not always easy to come by, and we really appreciate that. The second piece that's at play here is since almost the day I began serving as a city council member, I learned a lot about the tensions in the community that I frankly didn't know existed before I became a city council member. Frankly, I had heard that council members were entitled to a free buffet on Monday evenings. That's why I ran. Got elected, and it turns out there was no buffet, but there was a lot of other stuff on my plate. And some of that community tension has lived around how we operate in our neighborhoods, how we enjoy our community amenities, how we live together in no small part. And in many communities around the nation, there are not the added complications, nor, I might add, the remarkable benefits of living in a city where there is a university. We are blessed with the University of Montana. I believe at the city of Missoula, we are inextricable from it. We would not be our place without it, nor do I think the university would be what it is today without the community of Missoula. And we've decided to march down a path together again to recognize those tensions that we've been talking about, hearing about, experiencing over the course of the last 10, 15, 20, count them, how many years. What we've recognized is that a shared community value, no matter where you live, no matter who you are, generally speaking, a shared community value is our quality of life. And that means a number of things to different folks, but largely it means, can I be relatively safe, happy, content, and comfortable in the place I live, whether that's my house or my apartment or my dorm room or my trailer or my ranch, you name the dwelling place, or in my park or in my downtown or on my sidewalk or on the street. How can I be comfortable and safe? How can I enjoy this place over and over again? And how can I live my life here in a meaningful way? And that's what quality of life is, I think. And we define it in all sorts of ways, but there are some emerging themes. One is, it turns out folks don't like couches on boulevards. That is a lesson I learned some time ago. They particularly don't like them if they're abandoned or smelly. They don't like giant parties featuring bonfires and roasting meat in their next door neighbor's backyard. They don't like dogs off leashes. They don't like to step in stuff in parks. They don't like graffiti, vulgarity. They don't like goofy parking, speeding, the many things that sort of take away from our experience as Missoulians. And I think we have a responsibility to deal with those issues. Some of those issues do not rise to the level of having a police officer knock on a door, but they do rise to the level of us acknowledging an issue and having a trained professional person who can either engage in education or citation to help fix the problem. So together with the University of Montana, we're in 2014, fiscal year 2014, which begins for us this summer, we plan to embark on a program of improving our quality of life program and our resources to our neighborhoods, to our parks, to our open spaces, to our community to address those quality of life issues that we just have not had the resources nor the moxie to take on before. I think that's an important piece of business. We've had tremendous cooperation from Police Chief Muir, who's here tonight, thanks Mark, and a great reception from the community. Tie that with the neighborhood ambassadors who are working with ASUM to make sure that students are neighborly and that neighbors in our communities have good relationships with students, and if there are issues, they have an opportunity to learn about them and do their best to address them. That's a fantastic program. We're also going to continue to work with campus police to ensure that we have a great working relationship there so that we can manage these problems in neighborhoods, whether they're at the university or whether they're at Franklin to the Fort and all sorts of places in between, because we owe that to one another. We also believe and have wrestled with the notion for a very long time that there simply is not enough decent, safe, quality, affordable housing for students in Missoula, Montana. And with the help of President Engstrom and President Brown, we have together, for the first time in a long time, acknowledged that fact and agreed to work together to fix it. And what we want to do is encourage the construction of at least 1,000 new beds for students here in Missoula, Montana, that we think will take a lot of pressure off of our neighborhoods, will take kids out of dangerous situations in some low-quality rentals. We believe increase housing stock and opportunity and help stabilize a rental market that I don't think has been in very good shape for a long time. I want to clear up one misunderstanding that appears to be out there, and that is that the city or the university or ASUM has opened its vast collective checkbook to build housing or to subsidize housing, and that is simply not the case. I can tell you, however, that we've talked with a number of housing developers, most of whom, interestingly enough, are from out of state, who believe that a place like ours is a great place to build student housing, and they want to build it here, and they're not asking for anything in return except an introduction and some cooperation with regard to residence life and programming. They want to build safe places for students to live because they believe there's a market for places, safe places for students to live. We believe the same thing, and we're going to do whatever we can to encourage that. And sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's a little encouragement to get the ball rolling. We've now talked to at least 4 developers, and it was crickets before. So it's pretty remarkable. If you start talking about something, sometimes things change. We're also very interested in transportation and planning together around transportation issues, whether it involves transit and how people get to and from businesses and universities and homes and hospitals and services, or how they park. And we've had all sorts of interesting conversations around that and plan to have more. And those conversations range from, are there ways for us to cooperate in terms of the way ASUM runs its transit system and Mountain Line runs its transit system, and should we be planning together in terms of how that operates, to my wacky idea that I'm sure I stole from somebody, and that is, could we offer a tuition waiver of some sort or reduction for students who don't bring a car to the University of Montana? They don't need a place to park. They don't have to spend their money on parking. They don't have to play what I respectfully refer to as parking lot roulette or lotto. You buy a ticket and you may get a place, right? At least that's the way it was when I was here. I think there are some opportunities for us to be really creative around those issues. And then finally, we have an opportunity, I think, to plan together in all sorts of ways about the way the university grows over the course of the next 50 years and how that growth blends with the growth of Missoula. And if we look at those issues together today, maybe folks 50 years from now won't necessarily be wrestling over questions of golf courses or fairgrounds or forts, and we can say, long ago, the wise folks who came before us created a plan, and it's a fantastic plan, and it's a plan that we can continue to execute and live with. So we're working together on those topics, which is great. And then finally, all of us are working together, Missoula County, University of Montana, again, to create jobs in our community, to build wealth and prosperity, because without that, we cannot maintain or sustain a community. So the economic partnership, the work that Missoula County is doing with its industrial parks and TIF districts, the research efforts of the University of Montana and Montech are all combining, I think, pretty powerfully. And I think we're perched on the edge of some great things happening in Missoula. I am paid to be an optimist, but even if I weren't, I would be. I was born in Missoula, Montana in 1964. I suspect I will die in Missoula, Montana a long time from now, but I want this place to be better than it was when I was born, and I want this place to be something we can all be proud of many, many years from now. I love the place. I love the people, and we have so much opportunity here. We have to work together to take advantage of it. I think the folks up here and the folks who showed up this evening and many folks out in the community all day long in so many ways are working toward that end. So thank you. Look forward to your questions.
All for your comments and presentations. A couple of housekeeping items for all the members of the audience. First, I would like to take a moment to thank the people that put this event together. That's the staff in the mayor's office, the county commissioner's office, the president's office, university relations. There are a lot of people that worked hard to put this event together, so let's take a moment and thank all of those people. Finally, another housekeeping item. We will be fielding questions from those of you in the audience that have them for our distinguished panel here. So please feel free to engage yourself actively with the conversation. You can ask questions in one of two ways. One, all of you got a note card with your agenda, and so if you don't feel up to coming up to one of our two microphones up here, that was exciting. You can ask a question directly at one of these two microphones or ask a question on a note card, and those note cards will make their way up to me, and I can ask them of our panelists. So please feel free to do either of those things beginning now. So to begin the conversation, I really want to start with you, Mayor Engen, since we ended with you. You talked about the Community Quality of Life Initiative that you recently signed, and I was very honored to be a part of that process, conversation. And part of your contribution there from the beginning stages of that conversation, you talked about some of the, or we all talked about some of the issues that this community faces that in the course of the last year I have become also very familiar with at an accelerated pace. Issues in university neighborhoods and issues with student renters, issues with our transportation services. And one of those issues I remember in particular, you pointed out at one point, you said the ADU conversation is something that is very contentious right now. But you made a comment that there are ways for people in your position or in all three of your positions to really get to the core of issues like that, and that was part of the impetus behind that Quality of Life Initiative. So I'd like you to talk a bit about that.
Thank you, Zach. So during the course of this conversation about ADUs, accessory dwelling units, we have had folks at hearing after hearing after hearing come talk to us about the things in their neighborhoods that they believe are threatened by these accessory dwelling units. And my responsibility to a certain degree is to never become cynical and to keep my ears open. And one of the things that I kept hearing during this conversation were a number of legitimate concerns that folks expressed over and over again surrounding behavior, the kind of behavior in their neighborhoods, whether it's in the university or the Rattlesnake or anywhere else in the city, the kind of behavior that gives them heartburn in their homes. And those behaviors are what I call quality of life issues, and they are behaviors that if you lived next door to them or proximate to them, probably most folks could agree, that would bother me too. You know, whether an accessory dwelling unit is going to exacerbate those behaviors, I don't know, but I think it's okay for us to recognize and acknowledge that pain and try to figure out a way to deal with the pain. And I haven't been very good at that over the years. And it occurs to me during the course of this conversation that, frankly, ADU or no ADU, we have an opportunity to make a difference here with regard to those issues that are causing people pain. And again, it's not just the question of a loud party next door or a parking place stolen, but it's a question of whether a senior citizen can walk down a city trail with a little dog on a leash without being rolled by a big dog off a leash. Can people feel comfortable in their community, in their neighborhood? Are our parks safe? Are they comfortable? Are our conservation lands safe and comfortable? Are our public spaces safe and comfortable? And I think we can deal with all of those things, again, through the deployment, the thoughtful and I think meaningful deployment of resources. I tell folks that, I vetoed a leash law a number of years ago because I didn't think we had any capacity to enforce it, and I wasn't going to create an expectation that we were going to fix something that we simply weren't going to fix. Now we can fix that, I think, and a number of other issues. So that's kind of what's at play.
From my end, I would just say that student leadership is very grateful on the focus of student housing, because I do agree with your comment that making them more available housing for students at a high quality level is something that will improve those stresses in neighborhoods and so forth. So President Engstrom, I might turn to you next. You have spoken in your introductory comments, as well as many times in the past 6 months, over the plans for the Missoula College building and the location issue that you addressed in your opening comments. Along those same lines, how much conversation from your end is going on really towards getting to the core of some of those concerns related to developing South Campus? Because again, from my perspective, much of the core of that discussion is really at community quality of life in those neighborhoods. So how is this controversy and process and conversation really helping us get at the core of that issue?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Zach. First, let me just say that I fully recognize the difficulty of developing on a piece of land that has been a central part of this community for many years and cherished by many of our citizens. All things considered, if we had other choices to make there, I would just as soon have that land stay the way it is as well. But I just don't think that that's the responsible thing to do given this university's need to grow over the next 50 to 100 years. So there has been a fair amount of conversation on this topic over not just the last 6 months, but certainly over the last several years, starting with development of a South Campus master plan that, as I mentioned, was completed in 2007. Is that plan completely up to date now? No, it's not. I mean, I think that when the idea of a Missoula College on the South Campus was worked on in 2007, 2008, we were looking at a facility that at the time would house the enrollment that was on the order of 1,700 students, and now we're closer to 2,500 students. And clearly that student population is going to fluctuate a little bit with the economy, with popularity of two-year programs and so on. So it really does need to be a work in progress as we try to anticipate not just today's needs, but what are the needs a few years down the road, and take into account what does that mean for the surrounding neighborhoods, the surrounding communities. Take into account what it means in terms of traffic and parking and student housing and just people going to and from that campus, the infrastructure needs around that campus. That does have to be an ongoing dialogue, and we are committed to making sure that it remains an ongoing dialogue. In the end, I think that we have the opportunity here to design that South Campus in a way that makes us all proud that it is there. I mean, we have the opportunity to design it as a modern 21st century campus that focuses on green space, that focuses on trails and people interacting, focuses on smart parking and smart traffic patterns and so on, hopefully emphasizing as much as we possibly can the use of the bus lines, both ASUM bus routes and Mountain Lion. So I think we recognize that it has to be an ongoing conversation. If you look at the current campus where we are, over the last 120 years, the campus was here and neighborhoods developed around it as time went on. And I think it'd be hard to argue that the present campus, the present facility, it'd be hard to argue that that doesn't enhance the quality of life of all of Missoula. I mean, the ability to walk to these events that I mentioned and to be a part of that campus, the interaction, I think that's a tremendous strength of this community. We are known as one of the most beautiful campuses in America, and we don't want to do anything to change that. And so as we think about a South Campus, we need to plan carefully for that, make sure we retain that status as one of the most beautiful and one of the most green campuses in America, as we've been recognized for, and do it in a way that respects our community needs and in a way that people leave thinking the University of Montana is a great neighbor. That's really our goal here.
Great. Well, I just would editorialize quickly on one of the points you made. I grew up in Bozeman, and so thank you, nobody, for booing on that note. But one of the things I've really come to appreciate and was drawn to the University of Montana distinctly for the reason of the aesthetic. The campus is one of the most beautiful, certainly, as you say, and compared to the Montana State University often, which is much more spread out and has a lot more parking lots and pavement and things, students really appreciate that aesthetic and the compact nature of our campus.
Zach, let me if I could just add, because a part of all of that, we've talked about is transportation. And ASUM runs this bus service. And for those of you who may not know, it is the largest student-run bus service in the country. And the students run it as a business. It's a great experience for them. I can't remember how many rides in a year's time, but I mean, it's in the hundreds of thousands. And when you think of the positive good that has done for the community in terms of eliminating that many cars and providing safe transportation for people, I think that's a tremendous step that the students took in years past. And we have the obligation and responsibility to continue that kind of dedication as we think about the main campus, the South Campus, and all of our operations, all of our transportation. I think that's just a terribly responsible thing that the students did years ago. Is it perfect? Of course not, but it's a great piece of work on the part of our student body.
Our director of transportation would point out that students used to park on the Oval
Yes.
A number of decades ago. But I'd like to turn the next question to Commissioner Curtis. You spoke briefly about homelessness in your introductory remarks, and again, coming from the other side of the state, in a different community in this state, something I've really come to admire about the community of Missoula is the fact that we really embrace and attempt to address the issue of homelessness. I grew up in a community that the policy for decades in terms of dealing with homeless folks was buying them a bus ticket to Missoula, because Missoula would deal with those people and provide services for them and so forth. You mentioned that it is part of your office's planning to actually attempt to eliminate homelessness. Now that is an ambitious task, needless to say, but please, and Mayor Engen, feel free to follow up and chime in too. What does that look like? How on earth do we end homelessness?
Well, it is a big challenge, and it's being discussed nationwide. So you can look and see what they've done in Boise and Seattle and other communities. And I think that we all thought that the majority of our homeless had come in on a bus. And what we learned was half of them were Missoulians who had some bad luck and ended up homeless. Many of them are families. It's embarrassing to know how many of them are children. And so the city and the county did together say we need to tackle this. We can't hide from it anymore. And of course, we do have some amazing community assets here. We have the Paparella Center. I see Aaron in the audience that has had a soup kitchen for years and has struggled with a facility that is on a cold winter's night very overloaded. And their organization has made some big steps to have a new facility. But they're really there to deal with crisis situations. We shouldn't be expecting them to deal with people that are homeless because of some other reason. We have a lot of the organizations here that help with low-income housing and helping someone with their first month's rent and providing food for families, those kinds of things, have resources that have strings attached to them. So they can do this piece and somebody else can do this piece. And what we realized is we need a coordinator. And the city and county will be having a joint discussion for the public to join in on to look at the plan that we've come up with and help us to figure out. It's going to take some money because you can't expect that to happen just because somebody takes it on. We need to pay somebody to be that coordinating person. We need to have no wrong door, a single point of entry, so that, and some kind of system that protects people's privacy. But if I come to the food bank today and I go to the housing authority tomorrow, they can not have to ask these people who are in bad situations the same darn question. So I don't care about this at all, can you tell? I think the most surprising thing was just how many families. And it's just not acceptable. Look at us. Look what we have here. Why don't we have it for everybody? And housing is a huge issue. And we have people living in dumps. We have people living in trailers that it costs more to heat because they're heating outside because they're so bad than it costs for the rent. I mean, there have to be solutions. It will take all of us. And we've had some great people at the table. We brought people to the table that are developers, that, I sat on the committee. We had social workers. Just a different mix of people. Not saying that anybody who works with this population has done is bad or wrong. It's just we had to look at it from another way. And there are solutions. Now, there are people who are challenged that have co-occurring, if you have to live on the street all the time, maybe alcohol is your solution. But think about the mom who doesn't have food. So we have to fix it, so we will.
So what folks aren't aware is that those folks who came on the bus from Bozeman, those were round-trip tickets, which was sort of a, So it's interesting. I had a conversation this morning with some folks who suggested that, and we've heard this over and over again, Commissioner Curtis and I and other folks who work to solve around issues of homelessness and hunger and poverty. We hear pretty frequently, if you build it, they will come. Well, the fact of the matter is they're here, and they are us, and we have a collective responsibility to make a difference and to take care of these folks. And the fact is that every nickel we invest in taking care of these folks up front means we are saving many, many dollars on the back end. A little compassion, a little thoughtful programming today goes a long way toward keeping folks off the street and from becoming chronically homeless. Because when someone is chronically homeless, they need service after service after service. And guess what? We're paying that bill today, and we're paying a hell of a lot more today than we'd pay if we were more systematic and thoughtful about the way we do this, and that's what that Plan to End Homelessness is about. One of the pieces that play here that was interesting to me is that the difference for some folks between having stable housing over time and being homeless, and homeless can be defined in a whole bunch of ways. Homelessness isn't necessarily somebody camped on the street. Homelessness is, I sleep on my sister's couch with my 2 kids because I can't make ends meet. I can't feed them, clothe them, buy medicine, pay for food, and still make rent. Something's got to give, and fortunately my sister has a couch, right? The difference for that person who is a working person between being homeless and having a stable place to live might be $300 or $400. It might be the deposit. It might be the first month's rent or the last month's rent. That's the barrier. And if we can't figure out a way to crack that case, we're in trouble. But I think we can crack that case and a lot of other cases. None of it's simple. None of it lacks ambiguity. It all involves human behavior, our levels of compassion and capacity, but it's something that we simply have to deal with. And if anybody can do it, I think Missoula can.
Think about your own house payment. Could you make first and last month's rent? I mean, it's a big chunk. And there are some solutions out there, like having an organization like the YWCA does some real creative things, but have an organization say to the landlord, we will guarantee you that if they up and leave and have left a big hole in the wall, it will get fixed, kind of thing, so that you can give the landlord some comfort too. And having developers and landlords as part of the discussion, I think, has helped, but it will take the community.
Thank you both for your thoughts and passion on that issue. This next question is for the mayor and the commissioner, and it comes from a member of the audience. How do you both see the South Brooks Street corridor portion of Missoula being revitalized, and specifically attending to the vision of the fairgrounds? Commissioner Curtis, do you want to start on that?
Sure. Well, Missoula County recognized what a great asset we had in the middle of town that wasn't developed. And so when we hired our current fair director, the challenge to him was to help us take the plans and the discussions that the community has had about what the fairgrounds could look like, what kinds of facilities they would need to be self-sustaining in the future, and help us get there. Recognizing that we have buildings that were built there a really long time ago that don't have heat, many of them. They don't have the current needs that you would need for electricity. They're probably not placed where you would want them to make any sense, and that kind of thing. So there has been a big community discussion. We have included the folks in the Midtown section because we all know that that's an area that could be improved. And the city, of course, as the mayor will probably address, has an urban development plan, or an urban renewal plan for that area, or urban renewal district. So we look forward to the advisory committee that we put forward has not, they've had their meeting, they'll be making a recommendation to us, but we're waiting for them to also have their annual capital improvement plan to bring to us. and then we'll have that big discussion. Now, I know that there are those in the audience that have loved horse racing, and the recommendation is not to continue to keep that. We have almost 47 acres there. Over half of that acreage is encumbered by a racetrack that you wouldn't want to run your horse on because it's in crappy shape, and all the facilities that go with it. And in order for the fairgrounds to be sustainable and to add additional assets to our community, like a multi-use facility that could be used year-round for lots of different things, from dog shows to car shows to rodeos, it's going to have to go. And it's a tough Band-Aid to rip off. We understand the passion behind the people, but this is a problem nationwide that small racetracks, unless you have a gambling facility attached, aren't making it. And there really isn't a circuit of horses. Nobody raced in Montana last year, no county fair, except Miles City, who has the bucking horse race, or bucking horse sale, and they have a horse race with it. So it's a challenge that we have to face, but we would be irresponsible not to improve our asset that belongs to all of you.
Well, when I was younger, I had a career as a jockey, so I'm a little biased on the horse racing issue. You know, I'm fortunate enough we have a fine, thoughtful leadership at Missoula County that's wrestling with the questions around the fairgrounds, and I'll leave that to them and members of the community to figure out. But as Commissioner Curtis suggested, we do have an urban renewal district that surrounds a pretty hefty portion of the Brook Street corridor, and I think there is tremendous opportunity there. It's a district, it's Urban Renewal District number 3. It actually has money, and it has money but few projects. So we're actually looking for projects, and I'll hear any comer who has a notion of what we might be able to do there, because of late we've been investing resources in infrastructure, sidewalk infrastructure in particular, which is important, but we literally have more than $1 million a year to spend in that district that we can bring to bear on significant projects, whether they're mixed use, which I think is a tremendous opportunity for that area of town, to a variety of other projects and infrastructure improvements. So urban renewal districts, TIF districts, tax increment financing districts are really the only tool that's largely available to cities and counties around Montana, and it is a remarkably powerful tool. You can see the results of that in downtown Missoula today. That was our first urban renewal district, and downtown Missoula is much different today than it was in the late 70s, in no small part because of that community investment that we made over the course of about 20 years there. Midtown, the Brook Street corridor, tremendous opportunities there. We just need to start taking advantage of them or recognizing them.
Great. And it looks like we have another question from a member of the audience. And full disclaimer, Vicki Watson, one of my own professors. So thank you for the question, Vicki.
Not that old, Zach.
Well, I said one of my own professors.
Watch your transcript.
Well, the first thing I wanted to do was to thank all of you for the passion and vision and energy and compassion that you bring to this community. I think we're really lucky to have all of you. And as I think on the many accomplishments and opportunities and challenges that face this community, it's hard to pick one to comment on, but I'll pick one to comment on and one to ask a question about. And the question's for John, so if I forget to ask it, please prompt me, John, to remember to ask it. But the thing I wanted to comment on was that I do feel that one of the biggest needs and challenges in this community is to have a quality experience and quality facility for the students that seek the kind of education that they can get at the Missoula College. And I think we need to do everything we can to make that happen in a timely fashion and not drag it out. And we've been talking about this for decades, it seems like, and we need to get on with that. I do want to urge those who have something to say about this that the facility be a model for the greenest possible building that we can afford and achieve. I do want to point out that the green building people say that the most important part of green building is whenever you can to make use of the facility you have and the footprint you already have to upgrade that and you know, make it as good as possible. When I look at the place where Missoula College is now, there's a lot of empty space. There are one-story buildings where there could be 2- and 3-story buildings. So I do think that is something that should be thought about as one possibility.
And Vicki, I'm sorry, or Professor Watson, I should say. Sorry for interrupting, but please focus on the question.
Okay,
Yes,
that was my urging, and to think of that. And then the question is for John. Any update on our water system? Any new developments since the last time you made this report?
You bet. So we continue to have discussions with Carlisle Group, which is the new owner of the water system, bought it from Mountain Water, the previous private owner. As you know, we have an option at some point, we hope, to negotiate in good faith with Carlisle for that water system. And while I don't have anything to report today, I hope that someday in the very near future I'll have something to report. We keep in contact with Carlisle, and I'm very committed to the notion that we can run that water system and preserve it in perpetuity for the folks of this community.
I might follow up to Vicki's comment about green building by just, this is the next thing I was going to get to, and this relates both to Mayor Engen and President Engstrom. Both the University of Montana and now, within the last few weeks, the city of Missoula have laid out ambitious climate action plans for your own entities. And so as someone who studies that subject particularly, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the challenges and opportunities that those plans present, starting with you, President Engstrom.
Well, first of all, we have adopted a policy, a practice, I guess you'd say, at the university that speaks to any new construction meeting LEED standards. And you might have to help me remember what LEED stands for. Low energy something design.
Leaders in energy efficiency design.
Okay. So like the Payne Family Native American Center was recognized as a LEED Platinum building, the highest standard that you can achieve. And we have that goal of any new construction meeting that kind of a standard. And in fact, you know, working with the project, Zach, that you're on, we also have the long-term goal of retrofitting buildings and doing renovations that would bring some of our existing buildings up as close to that standard as we possibly could as well. So I think that we all have to be committed to that kind of a standard in going forward. And so that combined with the design in and around new buildings, I mean, if you go around the Native American Center now, I think you'd agree it's a very attractive building that fits into the campus and speaks in a powerful way to the values of the campus. I think we need to follow that kind of a philosophy, that kind of a value system in whatever we do in a new building sense. You know, I think in the bigger picture sense, the idea of sustainability is something that the University of Montana has an obligation to be a leader in, and it's a great thing to see that the city is coming along in that regard too. I met with the Campus Sustainability Committee, some of the members of that just a week or so ago, to talk about the steps that we might take as a campus to approach higher sustainability, ultimately a zero carbon footprint as the President's pledge calls for. And so we asked that group to say, what are the specific actions we can take, first of all, in the area of energy conservation and energy efficiency, which in that committee's estimation will get us 20% of the way to our goal. And then the next big chunk is what do we need to do to get the other 80%? Well, that's a huge task, and we won't get there without probably changing fuel sources at some point in time. So it's a big undertaking, but I think we're all committed to taking those steps as rapidly as we can, because it's the right thing to do, and just from a pragmatic energy efficiency and cost efficiency point of view, it's the right thing to do as well.
Mayor Engen.
Well, thanks. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention you all, I hope, got one of these. Contains interesting details about where your investment in our community goes on the inside, and then calls out some of these initiatives, including the climate action plan that the city just approved by virtue of my friends and colleagues in the Missoula City Council, some of whom are here this evening along with city staffers. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the good work you do. Our climate action plan calls for the city of Missoula to be carbon neutral by 2025. It is a hill to climb, we're all acknowledging that, but we had a great group of volunteers who put together our plan, and it has a number of pretty specific strategies that I believe will get us there. In addition to those strategies, we're hoping to count on some changing technology over time. And if you look at the way technology has changed in the last decade, I think we can certainly expect some additional changes that will work to our benefit over the course of the next decade or so to get us to 2025. One of the interesting things is that when we put what we do through the filter of energy efficiency, almost every time we end up being more effective and saving money and resources. So, for example, we put GPS devices on a number of our vehicles, big rolling stock like street sweepers and our vacuum trucks that we use to take care of our wastewater pipes, and we put them on parks and recreation vehicles. And in the case of Parks and Rec, having those GPS units on those vehicles helped staff figure out new ways to operate and manage so that we weren't driving nearly as much. And over the course of the last year or so, my recollection is we saved something on the order of 17,000 gallons worth of gas. That's a big deal for the investment, the relatively minor investment of a GPS device. So it's that sort of stuff that we'll engage in over and over again. We also have done, we've done retrofitting almost throughout all of our facilities, and again, we're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in energy costs, and we'll continue to do so. And this plan calls out many other ways for us to continue to do that, and we've hired somebody to keep us honest, somebody who, Chase Jones, really smart young guy, who is going to keep us on task and make sure that we follow the plan and meet our goals.
So Zach, the county does things in a different method, so we don't have any big thing that we've talked about, but we have adopted a green policy. And for example, the courthouse renovation, while it's challenging, as the president said, to rehab old buildings, we will be seeking LEED certification. Now, we aren't sure what level we'll be able to achieve, but what we did is we hired Larry Farms, our facilities manager, and he has done some amazing things to make us more energy efficient in lots of ways. We replaced the lights in our detention center, for example, which is a large facility, and of course it's occupied by people 24 hours a day. Just changing out the lights in that facility paid for itself in 3 months. So things like that, we have, he can monitor from his cell phone whether or not the power is turned on top of the mountaintops where our cell towers are that talk to the sheriff's department, so, and our 911 center. So we are doing things. We haven't adopted a huge plan, but we do have, we're doing a lot more recycling and all of those kinds of things. So we're doing our part. We just aren't very good at patting ourselves on the back out loud.
Well, there you go.
That's mood lighting, by the way, at the detention center. It's very attractive.
Well, I'd like to point to another audience member who'd like to ask a question. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Thank you, everyone. My name is Chris Gehring. I am a student here at the University of Montana. I'm a sociology student. Tonight I have a question for you. Many people falsely believe that HIV doesn't affect Montanans. Gene advocates for an ounce of prevention to yield a pound of cure. I'm wondering, Gene, Royce, and John, How are you upping efforts to provide more HIV, hepatitis C, free rapid testing, HIV support, and access to health care for people living with HIV here in Missoula? And a second question, how do you play a part in the existing HIV testing services already here, struggling to keep their programs afloat?
Thank you for your question. Who would like to take a stab at that?
So I'll confess to not having a direct role in any of that. I can tell you that our work in public health through the health department and our support both financially and organizationally of the health department, we hope is well engaged. If not, I'm more than happy to learn more and see if there's more that we can do.
Through Partnership Health Center, a lot of times the grants for HIV testing, education, and medicine comes into the state in a large lump. Like 1 year it might come to Missoula County and we share it across the state, and some years it comes to Yellowstone County and they share it across the state. But on a regular basis, the commissioners are signing some sort of contract with money going through one way or the other. So we do recognize and through PHC and the health department, but some of the money that actually comes into the county goes, to other organizations that are doing testing. I know that we do a lot of promotion, trying to get more people to recognize that it's important to be tested for HIV. And of course, we've come a long ways in the remedies or the medicines that can help people, and have also recognized that the earlier we start folks on those medicines, the more influence we have and more effect we have. So I too am happy to visit with you about what more we can do in this community. It is, of course, a lot of times related to money, but if there's ways that we can allocate things different, we're willing to look at it.
Thank you for your question. Well, the next question I'd like to ask really would direct to President Engstrom. Much of the conversation over the last year on the University of Montana has been framed around the question of enrollment. And you spoke about that in your address, and that frames parts of the debate on both sides of the Missoula College location issue, for example. And just this last year, we saw a decrease in enrollment that affected offices, budgets across campus, and affected, well, everybody on this campus in some way. How has your vision for the University of Montana been or not been affected by projections of enrollment, and how do you plan for the future? You've mentioned before, for example, that the number of high school students graduating in Montana is declining. How is your planning really geared towards that issue?
Well, I think there are three real contributions to the enrollment drop that we saw this last year, Zach. One is the decline in the number of high school graduates in Montana and some of the surrounding states, and we're in the early half of a decade or more of that demographic decline, projected to bottom out, I think, around 2020, and then start coming back up in a slow manner. It will be quite a few years out before the number reaches what it was about 5 years ago. So that's the declining demographics. Offsetting that a little bit, though, is the increasing percentage of students, of high school graduates, that are seeing higher education as a route to their future, whether that's through 2-year education, 4-year education, or even beyond. So as a result of that declining enrollment, or declining number of students, there is increased competition for those students, both in-state and in surrounding states. Other states are seeing the same kind of decline, some of the states around us anyhow. And so everybody is after the same group of high school graduates. And so the competition has become much keener. And so we see other institutions, even some in the state, that are increasing in a pretty dramatic way the resources available to offer scholarships and tuition waivers and things like that to help really attract students into their campuses. So the competition has gotten keener, and that has affected us as well. No denying that the situation that we have been in this last 6 or 8 months has given us a press that hasn't helped the situation, or publicity that hasn't helped the situation. And we did see a higher level of non-resident students who withdrew applications somewhere along the way this last year leading up to last fall's enrollment than we had in previous years. So I think that definitely played a factor. So we've acknowledged that and tried to identify what those problems are, and now are putting in place a number of mechanisms to reverse that trend. And so we too have been focusing, with the help of private donors and other sources of funds, additional money that can help in the financial aid process, essentially. One good example of that is looking at the veteran population, people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And so through things like the Yellow Ribbon program and working with the Veterans Administration, we've been able to provide considerably enhanced resources for veterans who want to come here to school, either from Montana or from any other state. And so we are targeting more resources at the financial aid side of that problem. We've put more resources, more energy into better publication of the good things about the University of Montana, and an increased number of contacts with prospective students. I visited last night with
Sorry about that.
visited last night with a number of faculty members, for example, in the School of Business Administration. I see Dean Gallanchetta here. A group of those faculty came together to sit down for an hour or two and make phone calls to prospective students. So we're getting faculty and staff more actively engaged in that recruiting process. It even goes to the graduate level as well. We wanted to make sure we're attracting more graduate students to the University of Montana, both from in-state and out of state. And so we're putting efforts there. How does it affect our long-term vision for the university? Frankly, not that much. I think we, to the credit of all of the people involved in thinking strategically about the University of Montana, we're thinking in the long term, what do we want education to look like? What do we want the goals of this university to be in the 5- and 10-year time frame? We recognize this enrollment change as a significant factor, but probably a short-term factor. If you look at the history of this university from, again, 120 years ago, it has been essentially on a path of continuous growth. Sure, there have been down years and up years. There have been wars. There have been economic recessions along the way that have affected enrollment, but that march has been a steady march toward increasing number of students. I have no doubt that that's going to continue in the long term. So we do need to take actions and do our planning in the context of where we need to head as an institution for generations, future generations of students. So we keep pressing forward, focusing on academic quality, academic excellence, providing our students with all of the opportunities in the classroom and beyond the classroom to give them one of the best educations available in public higher education in America.
Thank you. I'd like to direct, speaking of staying on topic with the University of Montana, but directing the question now to Commissioner Curtis. I'd like to, you spoke earlier about county health and a lot of the initiatives you have going along in that area. Can you speak briefly to the impact that the University of Montana, which really brands itself in certain ways on our human health professions focus? Can you speak to that relationship between, and maybe the points of interaction between the county and the university in that health field?
Sure. Well, we'd like to borrow your professors in the nursing program to have them on our Board of Health. We have that connection often. Garen Smith, who's a professor here at the university in chemistry, has served on the Board of Health for a long time. So often his students take on a health issue that we're interested in. It might be related to air quality. I know that some of his students were involved, for example, planting a bunch of poplar trees out by the wastewater treatment center to see if there are other ways to deal with the effluent rather than putting it back in the river. Trees grow really good with that stuff, by the way. But we do have good we do have a good relationship there. The nursing students have helped, as I said, with the measuring the students' BMI. The professors with the College of Nursing have always been just amazing to take on things and help out in the health department. We also, with the School of Pharmacy, I know that Bitterroot Economic Development District, which I serve as the chair of that board, has been working with them on, and the Montech Center and Mr. Fengi to talk about how do we look at all the assets that we have in this area, including the labs that are in Hamilton, and figure out whether it makes sense for us to look at producing, coming up with vaccines and producing them nationwide, because there sometimes is a shortage. So we have a good relationship there. The university is seen as a big asset to our community and also to our hospitals.
Great. I'd like to put one final call for questions out to the audience and end by really focusing on that keynote of collaboration, which really frames this discussion from the start. Mayor Engen, you often speak, at least when I'm in the room, maybe it's just because I'm a university student, but that the community of Missoula and the University of Montana are inextricably linked. And the success of both is mutually dependent on the other. And likewise, the city wouldn't be much without Missoula County and vice versa. So why don't you speak to you said you're paid to be an optimist. Speak to the opportunities and the vision you have for linking the strengths of each institution and office of governance moving forward for Missoula.
So for me, a piece of this, and again, an occupational hazard is I'm never satisfied. And I think that the folks up here are probably never satisfied. I suspect many of the folks we serve are never satisfied. And so we are always looking for opportunities to get better in one way or another. And sometimes they're much more obvious. The notion that we ought to collaborate on student housing, for example, is very obvious, but there may be other opportunities, smaller opportunities that we're missing today that we'll catch up on another day. Met with commissioners this afternoon to discuss a number of issues. And again, there are always great ways that we work together and improve, and small ways that we work together and improve. But the fact of the matter is that we can always get better. Everything we do, we can always get better. And the fact that we're willing to talk to one another about that, and that we're willing to entertain those ideas among each other is significant. I believe that the University of Montana and the City of Missoula have the strongest relationship either have had in a very, very long time. And that's largely about our ability. I can pick up the phone and call President Engstrom. I can pick up the phone, or you can pick up the phone and call me. And we can have a conversation about something big or small, and have enough respect and trust in one another that we can move the ball. I probably would not have brought the notion of student housing up 5 years ago, because I think the focus on this campus was much different. And I think that's natural. So people change, leaders change, opportunities present themselves, and we have to be relentlessly open to those. So it's optimism and to a certain degree being a malcontent and knowing that there's always something else that we can do a little bit better. There's something lurking around the corner looking for it. And then when we have the chance, capitalizing on that.
Great. Well, with that, I would like to thank our three guests.
Somebody standing up there by the...
Yes, if you have another question, please, we'd invite you up to the microphone, though. Well, just please note that your comments won't be reflected on the public record unless you speak into the microphone. So we have one more question. Thank you so much.
I think this question I'd like to ask for President Engstrom. In your calculations that you spoke about with the declining enrollment, have you taken into account the exploding internet online education and how that's going to affect the building projects? And I know President Dennison, when he was here before he left, he mentioned that there was enough room on this campus alone for 23,000 students. How does all that play into your long-range planning?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. There's no doubt that the internet has provided another avenue for us to deliver education, and it's an avenue that we've been pursuing pretty vigorously here, as has nearly every institution across the country. We've all been hearing about MOOCs, massive online open courses that enroll thousands of people. I think one important observation to make is that even on those campuses that are offering things like MOOCs and very active in online education, the MITs, the Stanfords that you hear about in the news so much, if you go to those campuses, they haven't stopped building infrastructure as well. I think that online education is becoming and will be an integral part of what we do as educators into the future until whatever the next technology is that comes along that replaces it. But it won't obviate the need for personal interaction, classrooms, laboratories, clinics, art studios, and so on. That won't go away. And as our state and our country continues to recognize the importance of higher education for today's and tomorrow's students, the number of students that will be participating in education, whether it's in person, in physical facilities, or through online or other technologies, that will only grow. I don't see us stopping the need or stopping the building of physical infrastructure anytime soon, because even those organizations that are heavily, heavily involved in online learning are still in need of infrastructure as well. So again, in that long-term view of things, there will be factors that come into play that affect our enrollments and will affect the way we teach students and so on. But over the long run, we still need state-of-the-art facilities for our students, whether it's 2,500 students or 2,300 students or 3,000 students in this particular case. I just don't believe that we'll stop needing good state-of-the-art physical space to provide education for generations of students.
Does that mean I'm to understand that you don't think that online education will have a negative impact on the enrollment status of, say, the University of Montana or other schools throughout the country? In other words, you're expecting enrollment to remain the same or go up in spite of all that?
Well, even students who enroll online are enrolled at a university. I think that, again, online will be an integral part of what we do. It already is an integral part, and it will remain a strong component of what we do. But do I think that it will, in the long run, have the effect of eliminating the need for a traditional approach to higher education or the need for physical infrastructure? I don't believe that. No. I mean, I believe that it's a great way to learn. My wife made her living at online education, and so I understand perfectly clearly the importance and the virtues of online education. But I don't think it will eliminate the need for growth in the physical infrastructure of most of our universities around the country.
Well, just a final comment.
Sure.
Actually, the predictions are, as you say, it will have a great effect. And the revolution is on now in terms of that change, and the predictions for the future are really going to be big in that direction. And we'll have a very strong impact on bricks and mortar and building and construction with the revolution that's taking on with that place. So that's my final comment. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for your question. And with that, Oh, we have another question. All right, excellent. Yeah, thank you so much.
This is actually for both the president and the mayor. It probably affects the county too, but I've been listening, and as a property owner, I'm concerned about the ADU question. I live in the south side of town, and we're seeing, unfortunately, growth not happen. We're seeing a lot of houses turn into rentals on our property. Right now they're renting the whole house, but I don't know what's going to happen if the situations change and people can produce more income off that property by putting in the ADU. But I've also heard the question, or at least it's in the handout, about safety, student safety, and the issues that we've seen over the last couple of years here in town. I've heard the situation saying that we've got to grow for the future, they've got to continue to build infrastructure. We've got a problem with air pollution in Missoula. There was a report that came out about 3 weeks ago where the county, I think somebody was talking about how we're 1% under a critical limit, which I guess 1% is as good as anything, but we'd like to see that come down. But again, the travel, the dust from the roads, the air pollution, we all know how much of a problem that is in town. I'm just wondering, why is it that the university hasn't put more money into dormitories, multi-story dormitories, to keep students on campus? You would think that would reduce the parking need. You would reduce the need to bring a car to campus. It's going to reduce the need to have the buses running all the time to bring kids in from the apartments. It's going to take the pressure off the low-income housing in the city of Missoula, hopefully open some of that up for the families that can't afford it because they're competing for the 4 kids that rent the apartment for $1,200 a month, whatever. Is there a reason? I mean, obviously land is scarce, but is there a reason not to go to more multi-story, skyscraper type dormitories on the campus?
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, so we actually have asked our Residence Life folks to do some careful planning about housing in a general sense and what aspects of that might be addressed on campus, what aspects of housing need to be addressed in an off-campus situation. And so it's certainly not out of the question by any means that on-campus housing might be, additional on-campus housing might be part of the solution to this, to the long-term solution. That's certainly not out of the question. At the present time, we have adequate on-campus housing for the students that want it. Students, and maybe Zach would speak to this, often want to get off campus after their first year or two in residence hall living, and so they look to the community. Sort of currently and in the immediate future, we don't see tremendous pressure for on-campus housing growth. We do see that pressure in terms of relieving the problems in the communities out there. But we will continue to think deeply about housing in a general sense and what parts of that can be addressed through on-campus solutions, what parts can be addressed through off-campus solutions. So it's not out of the question at all. One specific question on the horizon concerns the X's. Those have been there for a while, and they're very affordable housing. They're not really up to today's standards for what students might think of as good on-campus housing. So at some point we'll have to do something with those, and maybe that's an opportunity to build a different style of housing that would be attractive to the students, maybe in the upper division mode, more like the Lewis and Clark housing that we have now.
Mayor, did you have anything to add?
Well, sure. So one of the things that's at play here with what we're talking about in terms of so I've had a fairly quick education here on what they call purpose-built student housing. And in effect, we get a twofer here. We have a private developer who recognizes that there's a need in the market for a housing product that makes sense for students. And it's been something on the order of 5 to 6 years since I was 20 and sort of knew what folks that age were interested in living in. But Zach and others and the folks who are in this business tell me that they know the product, they know the market, and they build to that market. So a piece of it is let's provide that housing so that I think you're absolutely right. There are opportunities to free up some of that stock that could otherwise be occupied or rehabbed. But the second piece is we have an enormous need in Missoula, as many other communities do, to have residential life, downtown. And our downtown is fortunately really proximate to campus, and our trail connections make it incredibly convenient to live across the river and in downtown Missoula and commute to campus with very little problem. And so we create residential activity and vibrancy downtown by having folks live there and have activity 24 hours a day. And we also relieve some of that pressure. And we don't use public resources to build that housing. I learned from Zach that it turns out that after your freshman year, you're not particularly interested in wearing flip-flops to the shower that's down the hall and communing with everyone. You kind of want to live like a grown-up.
Sure, I would add to that then, since you put me on the spot. I think that the president's response to that is really spot on, that planning for and developing for on-campus housing is critically important, and looking at those facilities and how we can improve them or add to them is definitely part of the conversations, and students are at the table with that. But like you say, when you're 19, 1 year out of the house, you're really ready to try out independent living, or at least I was, and that is the culture here on our campus. And finding opportunities for students to live in a reasonable proximity to campus, but find really high quality housing is something that is really crucial to the student experience from my perspective. And it's really unfortunate for retaining students, or for example, when a student is seeking that independent housing situation, but the only affordable vacant place they can find is out past South Preserve or something like that. And that disconnects them from campus, from downtown, and it disconnects them from what it really means to be a student. So that's a need, and I'm really grateful for both of your leadership in that area. I think we're making some real positive strides and have made some really strong commitments from both of you to work on those issues and find sophomore housing and develop on-campus and off-campus housing that's safe, affordable, and proximate to campus.
I just have one more question. Sorry, I'll let you go over in a second, but it came up early in the opening remarks. President Engstrom, you mentioned that the Science Museum was looking to locate downtown, and I was wondering if you could expound on that. And for the mayor, I was wondering as well if you could give us a little update on what's going to happen at the old Macy's or is the Mercantile. Thank you.
So the Science Museum that I was referring to is called Spectrum. It's a wonderful project that came out of grant funding from the National Science Foundation originally, and still to this day. It's a museum that has been located on campus for the last 5 or so years, and a place where many families and children go to experience science, get hands-on time with experiments and so on. Really just a wonderful activity. But it was so popular that they outgrew the space here on campus, and so they began looking for an off-campus location, both from the standpoint of just additional space, but also to bring the wonders of science to the general public. And so they began to look downtown for an opportunity, and have focused in on one now that's under development, really. One of the opportunities did revolve around the Merck building for a while. That turned out not to materialize on a time frame that was workable for the Science Museum. So they've looked elsewhere and found a really nice location just down the road, a block or two from the Merck. And I think the plan is to have that in place sometime this summer, or maybe first thing in the fall would be, I think, an opening date for that new facility. So it'll be a great opportunity to bring that activity from the campus into the downtown area. You can envision all kinds of people going to the farmer's market on Saturday morning and then making a stop at the Spectrum Science Museum afterwards with their family. I think that's a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and we'd like to see more of that. We'd had long conversations with the owners of the Mercantile, the old Macy's building, and I can just tell you what I think I know. The owners have had some difficulties lining up financing. Some opportunities have gone away. There are lots of folks who remain very committed to trying to figure something out there. I don't know that it may not take another developer with maybe some different resources to make that happen. But today it remains owned by a developer. I think it's still committed, but they've had a number of bumps in the road, and because of that, they've lost some tenant spectrum among them. But we at the city certainly, and I know our partners out there in the community, including the Missoula Downtown Association, are very committed to filling that building up and making it a vital resource once again.
So Zach, I could address his air quality issues that he talked about. I had something in my speech about that, but when you try to pare down, you have to take some things out. So Missoula, the Board of Health directed staff to begin to work to, as you know, Missoula County the city of Missoula hasn't violated the PM10, which are the large particles, the stuff that we are a non-attainment area for. We've directed staff to work on getting to what they call a maintenance district for that. So that isn't an issue. But the new guidelines from EPA are regards to 2.5, PM 2.5. So these are the tiny particles that really affect your health more because things like masks don't necessarily stop them. So the health department is in prevention mode. We're very aware of it. They're monitoring across town, and we will be figuring out things to make sure that we do not go above those new standards. However, the community of Seeley Lake, because of the wood smoke, the wood stoves that many people there use to heat their homes, has gone over the recommended standards several times in the last few years. We were successful in getting a large grant to help change out the stoves there and put in more efficient wood stoves. We've also, the health department has done an amazing amount of work up there helping folks to understand how you burn efficiently with a wood stove, like having the old soggy log outside that you just go out and smack it and bring it in, throw it in and let it smolder is not necessarily an efficient way to heat your house. We've built wood sheds, we've helped people figure out how to cover their wood to keep it dry and those kinds of things. So we really are focusing in prevention in the Seeley area because a non-attainment area in Seeley Lake would be devastating to that community, partly because of the mill that sits there, which is the lifeblood of that town at this time. So we are aware of that, we are working on it, and I'm sure you'll hear more later.
It looks like we have another question from a member of the audience.
Good evening. My name is Fadi Al-Batal. I'm actually a very new resident to Missoula. We moved here about a few months ago. And as I was moving, I founded a new startup. So it's still not actually headquartered here in Missoula, but I would love for it to come to Missoula. So our company actually is in the consumer electronics space. So I'm glad actually to see that there is an incubation center at the university. I haven't actually looked into that. I'd like to hear a comment actually about the success of the incubation center at the university. And also the other part of the question is about the software and computer engineering program at the university and the plans actually to develop that program and how, because I think those students are going to be our potential future employees, right? The other fold of the question actually is about, in general, about developing the high-tech sector in Missoula and how we can actually evolve that sector here, because I see actually a huge potential in Missoula and in the area for the high-tech industry to come and really build something big. For that, you need a couple of things. You need first, of course, the resources, that would be the university. Second, you would need the money. So are there any plans to attract venture capitalist money into the area? And third, you need transportation. So, and for the high-tech sector, Silicon Valley is the Mecca. So is there any plans to open direct flights between Missoula and San Francisco?
Thank you for your questions. Who wants to take a stab at that first?
Well, let me start with a comment about the incubator center, and then I think John and Jean can address the others. So we have something called Montech. It's an incubator center that's right across the river from where we are now, just probably a few hundred yards from here. It's operated by the University of Montana now solely. We have an anchor tenant in that incubator center, Rivertop Renewables, a startup company that came out of our chemistry department here. And they're off to a great start. They're a wonderful company that is now providing employment opportunities for college graduates that probably had to leave the area to find employment otherwise before this. So it's a good success story. There are a number of other small startup companies housed in that incubator center. Several have been housed there and have gone off and sort of graduated from the incubator center and are developing elsewhere in town. So it's a great experiment and I think is providing some tangible results in the way of workforce development and job opportunities for the Missoula area. Related to computer science, that's a very healthy, active, vibrant program on the campus. We have some really recent but fantastic interactions with business people in the community right now in a project around big data, and we have a good collaboration with IBM going. In fact, we are the only institution to offer this big data education at the undergraduate level, or the first university to do that in the country. So there are great opportunities for development in that general area, and I'd be happy to talk in more detail with you, maybe one-on-one, about some of those opportunities. And John, maybe you want to address the other parts of that.
Sure. So the Missoula Economic Partnership is very interested in the tech sector and have been working closely with the university and entrepreneurs in the community around big data and other tech businesses and notions. Would love to have you spend some time with James Grunke. He was actually here earlier. He's the president of the partnership and can tell you all the pretty cool things we're doing. Much of it is entrepreneur driven, and we sort of create those connections among those entrepreneurs. And then we take notions like, what are the challenges that businesses like yours might face, and the idea that we ought to have a better access to Silicon Valley is pretty interesting. The folks at Missoula Airport are very aggressive about pursuing those opportunities, and they're very interested in listening to the business community with regard to how we might make some of those connections, and only through those conversations. So this summer we'll have direct service to Atlanta, for example, for the first time. It's a semi-regular schedule, but it's a direct flight to that hub, which opens up a lot of opportunity for folks. Today we're direct to, as I recall, we're still direct to LA. Some of these flights come and go seasonally. There are a lot of places you can get to from here, and any time that those folks can find a reasonable way to make a pitch for those additional connections, they'll do it. In some cases as well, communities like ours and others have capacity within the business community and within the tourism community to subsidize some of those routes. So if we can make a business case for it, we can sure have a look at it.
I think the other question that you asked was in regard to venture capital, and Missoula Economic Partnership is working on that too. They've been helping folks make some connections. They're working on establishing an angel network for Montana. They also put together some networking opportunities so that you can get together and meet other folks. I know there's one sitting in the audience right here that has a software company and it's somewhere else, and he also commutes. So I think some of those connections are great for you to make. And the nice thing is, you know, this was the mayor's idea to get us having this conversation in the community. There's probably businesses represented here that are investors in the partnership, but all three of us sit on that board. So we are looking for ways to make sure that your company is successful. We like to keep the companies that are here going. We like to help them expand, and we like to bring in new folks. And we know the small business are the lifeblood of this country, so we're glad you're here, and we can make those connections for you.
Well, thank you all for your questions. Thank you all for coming tonight. And in closing, I'd just say that collaborative leadership is a challenging undertaking, and it's inefficient and sticky, and like you say, Mayor Engen, it can take, good things can take longer to happen, but I ultimately believe that it makes us stronger as a community, and in 4 years as a senior here, I have come to love this place quite a lot, and that's a pretty key reason. So with that, I would like to thank you all for coming and being part of the conversation, and thank you, Mayor Engen, Commissioner Curtis, and President Engstrom for the great discussion. So.